Right, reprieve has come the way of the Deputy Governor of Ondo State, Lucky Ayedatiwa, as the State House of Assembly has decided to suspend impeachment proceedings against him. Now, this follows the refusal of the Chief Judge of the state, Olusegun Odushola, to set up a panel to deliberate on the impeachment charges. Well, the Chief Judge said a subsisting order of an Abuja Federal High Court barred him from taking steps in the matter. The court had granted the order, the request of the Deputy Governor, that the impeachment proceedings be paused until it has determined the case. Well, in a letter to the State House of Assembly, the Chief Judge said though he is not unmindful of a constitutional provision which precludes any court from interfering with the proceedings of the House of Assembly, a court order is binding until set aside either by a court of coordinate jurisdiction or by an appellate court. Well, the spokesperson of the Assembly, Olatunji Oshati, told journalists that the lawmakers will now comply with the order and halt further proceedings on the impeachment.
Well, for a closer look at the legal issues involved in this matter, let's bring in a legal practitioner, Anthony Ojo. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, these are issues that border on law. Technically, people have been asking questions about the back and forth. Now, let's situate this. The Chief Judge has said he has no such rights to actually convoke the panel that will look into the impeachment proceedings or into a subsisting court order. Make this clear, because in the first case, we're told that the courts externally cannot interfere in the House matter.
Well, I want to very much, first and foremost, commend the Chief Judge of Ondo State for obeying and respecting the order granted by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Though the courts, the Federal High Court and the Ondo State High Court, are of coordinate jurisdiction, but the Chief Judge has decided to obey the order granted by the Federal High Court, granting some sort of temporary reprieve to His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Ondo State. I want to commend that act. And I also want to commend the House of Assembly of Ondo State for agreeing to halt the proceedings with regards to the supposed impeachment or the impeachment process which had begun before now. The reason why I'm starting with on this note of commendation is because we have been used to a situation where authorities, both executive, judiciary, and legislatures, disobey court orders, which is very sad. And the question I always ask is, why do we have courts? Because all the acts, if you check in the last 6 to 7 years, there are a lot of orders and judgments that have been given by the courts, from the Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal, the State High Courts, even the Supreme Court, and people disobey them and behave as though nothing happened. So for this that has happened now, I want to commend them for halting whatever proceedings. You made reference to the fact that, yes, the courts ordinarily should not interfere in the job of the House of Assembly or the legislature, as it were. When there is an indication that the process as provided for in the Constitution is not followed, the court will definitely put whatever actions that have been carried out into question. And that is why you have the issues of Inakoju versus Adeleke that was decided in 2007, the case of the impeachment of His Excellency Senator Rashidi Ladoja, former governor of Oyo State. We also have the case of Darie versus Dapianlong, the case that these cases were decided by the Supreme Court. In the case of Darie versus Dapianlong, it was like barely a month before the handing over date on May 29, 2007, that this judgment was delivered. And the Supreme Court ordered that it should be restored back to the position of governor with all the perquisites and everything. Now, where the courts have discovered that what the law stated should be followed is not followed, definitely the courts, that is why we have the courts, they have to stop whatever action it is or call whoever it is that are carrying out this act to order that, look, you have not followed the law. So, and we've had a lot of some other cases, including the immediate past deputy governor of Kogi State, where the court, in fact, if you remember, that one was a whole bunch of drama. The panel that was set up by the former chief judge of Kogi State exonerated the former deputy governor. And the man who chaired that panel, the learned senior advocate of Nigeria, John Baisha, said he even heard it on radio as he was leaving the state capital that they had impeached the deputy governor, even when they had returned a verdict of not guilty against the deputy governor. So I think the attempt to oust the jurisdiction of the court or the interference of the court should not be looked at that the court is interfering, really. The court has the powers to stop or halt or call to question any action of any institution, any individual, no matter how highly placed, especially when it comes to the process of...
So what you're saying is that the judge has not in any way breached the Constitution?
Absolutely.
Has the process really been followed in this particular matter?
Well, the judge, the learned trial judge who gave the order that the impeachment process should be halted, must have looked at the facts placed before him, based on the complaint by His Excellency the Deputy Governor, that look, these guys were about to throw me out of office. The processes that should ordinarily be followed were not followed. I heard about the issue of service of the impeachment process itself, or the impeachment notice itself, that he was not served personally. I think he said he was served through a secretary or something. All these are part of the issues that must have been placed before the learned trial judge of the Federal High Court to have granted this order. And like I said, temporary because...
So what you're saying, if I get you correctly now, I mean, you're saying there's precedence already,
absolutely.
Right? So there's no monopoly of the legislature in the process of impeachment.
Definitely.
The judiciary can step in and stall the process.
Because...
Is that what we're to believe?
Absolutely, there is no monopoly. Because if you take a look at the judgment that was delivered in the case of Inokuju versus Adeleke by the Supreme Court of Nigeria in 2007, there was a very thorough analysis of all that the legislature had done that led to the said or purported impeachment of the then governor of Oyo State, up to the point of even sitting in a hotel, I think the Rovans Hotel, or I remember. These processes, they are precedents. And like I said, the case of Inokuju and Adeleke, the case of Dario versus Dapianlong is also there, where the courts came down heavily, descended heavily on the legislature. I think in the case of Plateau State, we had a case where there were either 4 or 6 or 8 of them who claimed to have impeached the governor at that point. And the court said no. And that's, like I said, that brings us back to the point that the reason why we have courts is because we need to have sanity in our country, sanity in how we execute our laws, sanity in entrenching the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic.
So, Anthony, also let's go back on how you started with your commendation. Could the Chief Judge have ignored the court order?
We have had instances where some chief judges did ignore court orders. We've had instances where people ran to the court, especially deputy governors who are, of course, the endangered species in this case now. We've had instances where they have gone to court and the chief judges or the chief judge then ignored this order and set up this panel. And that's why I said I commended the chief judge, because he could have decided to overlook it.
Because there's a constitutional provision there.
Absolutely. But you see, I think the chief judge also must have looked beyond the notification from the House of Assembly, and probably also looked beyond what the court must have, what must have come beyond before the court, and said, look, from what I can smell, the process has not been duly followed based on what the Constitution says.
Let's talk about that particular aspect of the Constitution. Are you referring to 287?
Absolutely.
Now, what exactly does it say? I mean,
misconduct generally. Terms. You see, misconduct based on acts carried out by the individual, whether president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. And in the case of the deputy governor of Ondo State, who I would say, well, on a lighter note, that he's very lucky based on how his name.
Say that again.
Yes, he's lucky that this process. If you look at the
He's not
allegations,
just lucky. He's Orimisan.
exactly. So if you look at the impeachment notice, a lot of allegations were placed, were stated against him,
including financial
misconduct. When the governor, His Excellency Akeredolu, was away
on medical
ill
leave.
health. The job of the legislature at this point is to thoroughly and properly investigate what really would have led to the conclusion that there were acts of misconduct, or the deputy governor had carried out acts that would be referred to as misconduct.
But is this a temporary relief, or?
I think so. I think from all that we can see and all that we can gather from what the press, from what you guys have been reporting, I think it's temporary. While it is not a Pyrrhic victory, but it's a temporary relief. I suspect, while I'm not putting words or ideas into their heads, but I suspect that by the time the case at the Federal High Court will be disposed of, the legislators will probably go back to the drawing board. They have lawyers who are working for them to say, okay, come and tell us, let us do what the law says, so that the chief judge would not want to bring the issue of a court order, and then no court would fault our action, because what the Federal High Court has done now is to fault the process, especially, like I said, the issue of service of the impeachment.
All right, thank you so much for enlightening us on this. Anthony Ojo is a legal practitioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.